It's kind of strange to think about, but for most of human history, one of our most powerful life-saving tools was just overlooked. It was seen as a luxury, a little curiosity, maybe an afterthought. So, let's dig into why that was.
Yeah, long before we had any real understanding of disease or germs, this one simple substance was quietly shaping our survival. Nobody really knew why it worked, just that it kind of did. It's a really fascinating puzzle when you think about it.
And that substance, of course, is soap. Its story is a perfect example of this whole idea. Sometimes the smallest tools really do hide the longest stories. To really get a handle on its power, we have to go back. We have to try and picture a world that was almost entirely without it.
Okay, so let's talk about that world, a world before clean. For early civilizations, daily life was just messy. It was inseparable from dirt, from grease, blood, ash, and these weren't just little inconveniences, They were literally the textures of survival.
Just try to imagine it. You're in constant contact with stuff that clings to everything: your hands, your tools, your clothes. And the most basic cleaner you have, plain old water, is pretty much useless against it.
And this gets to the heart of the problem, right? It's a basic chemistry thing. Oils and fats literally push water away. They bind to surfaces, they trap odors, they help things decay. So just rinsing with water, it was totally ineffective against the very things that you most needed to get rid of.
Now, it's not like people didn't try to solve this. They absolutely did. All across the ancient world, you see these experiments. In Mesopotamia, they used abrasive sand. In Egypt, alkaline plant ashes. In the Indus Valley, they'd scrape grime off with oils. All these methods were, well, they were practical. Sometimes they were even symbolic. But none of them could really reliably solve that core chemical problem.
And that is the absolute key. The real struggle here wasn't about a lack of effort or about getting the rituals right. It was an invisible battle, happening on a level they couldn't see, between molecules.
Right, so the invisible barrier. Why did all those early attempts fall short? Well, it's because they were running headfirst into a chemical wall, an invisible barrier they had no way of seeing or even understanding.
And this really lays out what I mean by a cycle of failure. Each method, it kind of solved one problem, but it just created a new one. You use sand, sure, you get the dirt off, but you also damage your skin. You use oils, okay, you loosen the grime, but now you're left with this greasy residue. And alkaline ash, it could cut some grease, but it could also burn or seriously irritate you. So societies were just stuck in this loop of only getting part of the way there.
And it all comes back to this one invisible fact. Water molecules and fat molecules they can't dissolve each other. It's like trying to mix oil and water, literally. And without understanding that, without even knowing what a molecule was, there was just no way around this fundamental obstacle.
So on top of the chemical problem, you've got a really big practical one: production. I mean, think about it. Any compound that could actually cut through grease needed some pretty expensive resources. You needed fuel to heat things. You needed a lot of fat. You needed labor. So any effective cleaners that did exist were super rare and almost always used for things like textiles, not for everyday people.
So again, progress didn't stall because people were lazy or weren't trying. It stalled because they were missing the why. They lacked the explanation for what was really going on. That is, until a completely accidental discovery finally gave them the key.
All right, so this brings us to the breakthrough and the turning point. It didn't come from some brilliant scientist with a grand theory. Nope, it came from simple, repeated observation. People just noticing a very strange reaction happening over and over again.
The process itself was incredibly simple. You take some animal fats, you heat them up. Then you combine them with something alkaline, like ash from a fire, and what you get is this new mixture, something totally different that did something that should have been impossible. It made grease and water mix.
Today, we have a name for this: saponification. It's the chemical reaction that takes two things that are kind of a problem on their own, greasy fat and harsh alkali, and transforms them into a third, radically useful thing: a chemical mediator.
So how does this mediator work? Well, the soap molecule is kind of like a tiny double agent. It has two ends. One end absolutely loves fat and oil, so it grabs right onto the grease and grime. The other end loves water, so when you rinse, that end grabs onto the water molecules. The dirt isn't just being scrubbed off anymore, it's being chemically unlocked and then carried away. It's brilliant.
So for the very first time in history, cleanliness could actually be scaled up. And this one simple reaction would end up reshaping the world in ways that nobody, and I mean nobody, could have possibly predicted.
So what happens when a tool like this starts to become more common? Well, it triggers a quiet revolution. You start to see these cascading effects on everything. daily life, new industries, even just what we expect from the world around us.
The immediate benefits were just so practical. All of a sudden, preparing food got a whole lot safer. Wounds could be cleaned much more effectively, and this is way before anyone understood the concept of infection. Clothes and textiles lasted longer, and maybe the biggest deal of all, it made living together in dense cities much more sustainable.
And over time, this wasn't just a personal thing. Soap reshaped entire societies. You see new kinds of infrastructure pop up, like public bathhouses. Whole new industries get started around rendering fat and extracting alkali. But honestly, the biggest change might have been in our heads. It was a shift in expectations. Dirt was no longer seen as just inevitable. Cleanliness started to become the new norm.
And this effect just compounded, slowly over generations. This wasn't a single event that changed everything overnight. What happened was that societies with regular access to soap just became more resilient, not because of some high-tech medicine, but because of a simple daily habit.
Which kind of brings us full circle, back to that striking contradiction at the very heart of this story.
Think about it. Soap was born from waste, from leftover fat and ash, things you'd normally just throw away. And yet this incredibly humble substance became one of our most effective, even if it was totally unrecognized, tools for survival. It wasn't curing diseases, not directly. It was just removing what shouldn't be there day after day until that very absence became its own form of protection.
So, in the end, the mystery was never really why soap mattered. Of course it mattered. The real question is, why did it take us so long to realize that it always had? And it makes you wonder, right? What other simple, powerful tools might we be overlooking today?